Greg Sankey said that he is mystified why there's a lack of clarity over the responsibility of tampering in college football today. And all I have to say in response to Greg Sankey is, yeah, me too, Greg. Me too. Because right now, the SEC is publicly decrying about tampering and rule breaking in college football, as highlighted by Ross Dellinger in his article about a week ago. But their own teams like Ole Miss, LSU, Alabama engage in blatant tampering and exemplify the problem of poaching in college football today. Now, most recently, Dabo Swinney has pointed this out. There are rumors out there that have been actually confirmed at this point, so not just rumors, but news out there of Lane Kiffin FaceTiming Ole Miss players to try and get them to jump in the portal and come join him at LSU. And in fact, it was at the last offseason or 2 off seasons ago, Chuck Martin from Miami of Ohio actually came out and publicly called out Alabama for stealing their kicker. So naturally, you would think, well, why would the conference that is doing the most blatant tampering right now be the conference that is complaining about it the most? It's quite simple. Because the SEC is full of hypocrites. Their commissioner is a hypocrite, their coaches are hypocrites, and their athletic directors are. The reason you won't hear this is because many in the media are bound to the SEC and access to the SEC. I myself, I am a Big Ten guy. I have no requirement to have access to the SEC, so therefore, I don't care if the SEC wants to say, no, you can't come to SEC Media Days. You can't come to this. You can't come to that. All I care about is being able to tell you the truth of what's going on. And the truth is that the SEC wants to put up a front that they, are going to disband from the NCAA and all this stuff, which they actually might do. I've talked about that before. But they just want to put up this front of everybody else is cheating. Everybody else is tampering. Everybody else has money. We have none. Meanwhile, they don't want to address how they have been called out for tampering multiple times, and they don't want to address the cheating that they did for years, paying players. And now you can't pay Cam Newton $180,000 anymore to come to your school. It's going to cost $3, $6, $5, sometimes even $6 million, not thousand. Dollars to come to your school, but the SEC does not want to pay that. So the SEC instead goes out here, talks about tampering and how it's a big problem and all this stuff, when all the while they are the ones doing it. Now, Ross Dellinger's article did not just feature people from the SEC. I want to make that clear. He had sources from all other places too, and it was a lot of different people talking about tampering. But one of the groups that was talking about the most, and the group that said that they were thinking about only playing conference games, was in fact the SEC. I will link that article down below. You can go read it yourself. But coaches are encouraging players to enter the portal despite having contracts or being in classes at other places. Now, Miami is really the one that is most well known for this. And of course, Miami is not in the SEC, but Miami, along with Alabama, LSU, and Ole Miss, are some of the primary schools that are the biggest issue of this. And also the SEC wants to talk about how nobody is following the House settlement $20.5 million cap, when in reality, none of their teams are following it either. At least teams like Ohio State are coming out and saying the cap is too small. We just need an unlimited cap? Because right now, nobody is following that actual cap and what it is. Instead, you get the SEC saying, well, nobody's following it and we're just trying to do our best. Bullcrap. They're not. They're just trying to put up a front to make it seem like they are. Now, I will give some credit here to the Texas AD, Chris Del Conte. And honestly, if there's an SEC team that I actually have like somewhat respect for at this point, it's Texas, because Texas is the team that's going into the SEC. They're winning right away, and they're not falling for all the SEC BS, right? They are out here talking and actually making some sense. Chris Del Conte in the article said, quote, "We made the rules." He's talking about the NCAA. And yet members broke the rules and lawyered up to sue over the rules they created. Now, he is not talking about himself there, but he is talking about how the NCAA is actually run by the schools. And if you follow Bud Elliott over at the Cover 3 podcast, he's talked about this quite a bit, to where a lot of these schools are complaining and saying, well, nobody's enforcing these things. And it's in reality, The NCAA is a collection of the schools. And so they are the ones that are really not enforcing it because, like I said, everyone tampers. There is no school out there that doesn't tamper. The only thing that some schools do and don't do is some schools do it really well, like Miami, and some schools really stink at it, like Clemson, right? This is how the world of college football works today. And if anybody wants to come out here and try to cry, oh, well, we don't tamper, everybody else is tampering, they're just hypocrites because everybody does it. If you listen to Dabo Swinney with his whole tampering story and everything going on, you will quickly learn that Ole Miss was caught red-handed tampering. Now, I'm not going to go through the entire story with you or anything like that, but I would encourage you to go listen to Dabo Swinney talk about it because it is very eye-opening and it does give you a glimpse into how tampering works. Now, the agent Ryan Williams of the Clemson, well, former Clemson player Luke Farrell was the one that got all this started. He informed Clemson's general manager Jordan Sorrell that Pete Golding was aggressively pursuing Luke and that, they didn't need to worry because Luke wasn't going anywhere. In reality, all that agent wanted to do was to try and get Clemson to up their offer so that way he can make more money. It's more lucrative for him. They get a large amount, about 15-20% typically, which is much more than they should be getting and much more than what they get in the NFL. Thank you, NCAA, for not putting any agent requirements out there or how much agents can make. That's great too. You can't tell my sarcasm here. But Clemson basically told the Ole Miss GM, hey, tell Pete Golding to cut it out. And the Ole Miss GM said, well, he's my boss. I'm not going to tell him what to do. He just does whatever. I'm obviously summarizing quite a bit here. Please go listen to Dabo Swinney if you want the entire story. But basically told him, I don't know what you want me to do. He's my boss. Pete Golding, in fact, also got guys like Trinidad Chambliss, former quarterback Jackson Dart, to go and speak to Luke or contact Luke, not speak to him face-to-face, but contact Luke about going to Ole Miss. This whole situation is complete buffoonery. This whole situation is utter tampering and being caught red-handed for it. But of course, Ole Miss is a part of the SEC where they want to complain about tampering and everything else. Eventually, this story ended with Pete Golding sending pictures of the contract, of the $2 million contract, 2 years, $2 million to him to come and play at their school. It's an incredibly crazy situation. It's an incredible amount of tampering and everything else. And as much as, I know Dabo is not everybody's favorite coach out there and stuff, and not everybody loves Dabo. I get that. But you don't have to love Dabo to understand the impact of tampering here and just how hypocritical it is for the SEC to come out and talk about how everybody else is tampering and how terrible of a thing it is, when in reality, they're the ones out here doing it just like everybody else. And honestly, they're probably doing it better than many other people are. So Ross Dellinger's article clearly states that the SEC is upset with this. The SEC wants to get away from it, but in reality, they're not going to, because they're tampering just like anybody else. And if they are going to get away from it, they're going to continue to tamper with other teams and try to create themselves into a bigger league and do all that stuff. So it's a crazy situation. It's a sad situation that we're in right now in college football because there is no leadership, there is no guidance, and there's nobody leading the way. And if we try to give that to the SEC, it's going to go terribly. And to show my, to not show my bias, if we give it to the Big Ten, it's going to go terribly, because conferences should not be running college football. It should be a collection of the schools. The problem is that the schools are not honoring their portion of it right now, because some schools want to do this, some schools want to do that, and then at the end of the day, nobody is actually following any rules because we're not actually putting it together, and the NCAA can hardly ever win in court. So let me know your thoughts on the entire situation. It's pretty crazy. Even if you just want to, comment down below entered or something like that to be entered into the contest to win one piece of apparel from Home Field or one of these hats from the Big Ten Huddle merch site, please do so. Like I said, comment, like, subscribe, do all that good stuff, and we'll get to it. But just know the SEC, as much as it's full of cheaters from years ago when they were paying players, it's also full of hypocrites and people that are just not being honest at all either.